Hackers and hackerettes, developers and developerettes, welcome to a new video in our Batframe series. If you don't know what this is, I do recommend you watch the videos in the playlist called PHP microframework Batframe, which essentially is a guideline or a timeline where we built this PHP microframework from scratch together just using Cloud Code. So it's going to teach you like a bunch of things. And I do recommend that you watch them in order because you will be missing a lot of context if you do not. All right. So let's get started. I'm going to assume that you have watched the previous videos and you've watched the previous one specifically where we did some refactors to how Cloud MD files work and how Batframe skeleton is now referencing the original Cloud Code MD in the actual in the actual framework itself right here. Okay. So in today's video, we're actually gonna start adding some persistence layer to PHP or like to our Batframe. What that means is that we are going to build a database layer. So I'm gonna actually build two layers. The first one by default is going to be files. So we are gonna be storing by default files in a we're gonna be storing data in JSON files. Because this is a micro framework, so we'll probably not be storing a huge amounts of data. And using JSON files is one of the easiest way to just store some data, assuming that you're not, of course, storing user accounts or authentication or anything like that. This micro framework is essentially made, one, to practice our AI prompting, and two, to make it super fast to start really super simple applications, not ones that you do have authentication and database connections and all of that. So if you have an application that requires these things, please just use Laravel, which is the best in class in PHP. So I don't want to specifically make things complicated. So that's why we're going to be using JSON files as one layer, and it's going to be the default layer. The second layer is going to be SQLite. Okay, SQLite is like a file-based database that just lives in a single file, database.SQLite, and then we can be using a template like an ORM kind of style, but like a PSR, not PSR, what's it called? PDO. Yeah, we're going to be using a PDO based ORM, kind of ORM, in order to interact with our SQLite database. So I will try to keep this as simple as possible because, again, I don't want like super complex stuff. And if you require things that are more complex than this, then PHP like Batframe is not the best option, and you do have other PHP frameworks that are best to be used in your situation or in your scenario. All right, so let's get prompting. Actually, I am using light mode here. I'm sorry, but I'm just used to light mode so much right now, and it does help with my eyes. So I'll be using light mode here. So we are going to build two features together, or like a major feature together, so that way Claude just prepares, it gets ready. The persistence, I hope I wrote that correctly, layer in Batframe, it should like persistent storage should be storage unit should be swappable. By default, we're going to introduce two layers. JSON files, also the default layer, and SQLite. For JSON files, we can just use for both layers and any others that would come later, we should use the same interface because they are swappable, meaning that all methods should be named and signed the same on both JSON and SQLite classes that will handle storing and fetching the data. Okay. The default should be JSON files because we don't want to make we want to make the framework as easy and as quick as possible. However, in cases where a more robust engine is needed, but the scope is still small enough, SQLite does the job perfectly. Let's get cooking. Okay, I'm gonna start it in plan mode, just like we've been doing. And right now you can see the entire prompt. So what is it going to do right now is going to load the superpowers. Again, if you don't have this, then you can install it from /plugins in Cloud Code, and then you can install the superpowers plugin. And that's it. So it's going to start by like exploring the code base. Maybe I can increase the text a bit so it's easier to read. All right, what shape should the persistence API take? This is the biggest fork in the road since it determines what the same interface on JSON SQLite actually means. So collection, document store, table SQLish query builder. So here we have like store users insert and store users find. And then we do have like active record models. I do have table SQLish query builder, which is too complex, I believe, from like for our needs. But in here we can use this design, but also we need more complex filtering. There is no reason to persist data if we can't fetch it later. So using something as simple as db users find, and then username, for example, is Michael. So what we could do here is I'm thinking of like the chain. If we want to do like 2 filters instead of 1. So for example, where username is Michael and age is whatever. So what we could do is we could just have it okay. So here what we could do is that we could have, whenever we pass to find, we have 3 parameters. One is going to be the condition. Let me think. So here, find is always going to return an array of the data. But then find, so what I want to do is first we're going to give it a condition like name is Michael. And then here we can pass an or. So it's like it's a named parameter. Or name is, I don't know, like 40. Okay. So here we could have that returns an array. The or is a named parameter for a condition. So it accepts both or and so this is like filtering, but what is in, right? So for like what I'm thinking about is that we do have like where we want to filter by name equals Michael. But what if I want to filter by name doesn't equal Michael? So what we could do is, if we want the not equals behavior, we can start it with, or we can use a different method called find not, and then Michael, or like username or name is Michael. Okay, so let's see now if it understands it, if it can like pick up our Slack right here. This is not like I do not think this through so well before I like start the video. And this is the beauty of it. So we both just dive in right now. And we see like what we can think of and what we can come up with the AI. So like this is both brainstorming and implementation of the actual feature. So yeah, we're gonna let it cook literally, and we'll see what we can work with right here. So it's checking if PDO, your note raises the real design question, though find or covers equality and find not covers negation. There's no way to say age greater than 18. How should non-equality comparisons greater than in like between null be expressed inside the criteria array? Okay, equality plus find not only. Operator triples. Bare scalar equals equality. So is greater than is in. I think this is cool. It's very similar to how it's very similar to how rules, validation rules work, and I do like that. Also add is equals as an option beside it being the default option. So both this without any operator and is equal is going to work. Ordering, limiting, and paging have to live somewhere. Okay, so now it's coming up with orders and limits and stuff. So more named args on find. I do agree with that. Fluent chain, so order by, no. Sort in PHP, no ordering API. I think more named args on find is going to be the easiest. Which rules out a fluent chain unless find changes shape. I don't want to change its shape. I think more named arguments is going to be the best, because I just want like a single find method to be as super simple as possible, but with the extensibility that you might want for more complex fetching. Auto ID. What does Batframe add to a record you insert? Created add, updated add, auto ID. Caller supplies the ID. Auto ID, created add, updated add. Both are great. Also, make sure that ID can be overridden. in case the user passes an ID themselves. Same for created and updated at. So that way, like if you provide it, cool. If you don't provide it, then don't do it. Two things left to pin down. Then I'll write up the design. All right, let's see. Reading your node, keep created at, updated at, but let anything the caller passes win. Confirming since it decides whether timestamps are in the contract at all. Yes, ID plus timestamps all overridable. All of them are. Config key plus sensible default. How does an app choose the driver? Driver name string, and then problem is I cannot see the hidden lines here. I do hate that. Is there's no way that I could see these hidden lines? That's really dumb. They should fix this for sure. So I think a config key plus sensible. The config key should also be saved or should also be referenced from the .env file, because we might want JSON files on local, but SQLite on production server, for example. Okay. So why does it say here notes only? Didn't we choose an option? Okay, let's see what it's gonna, like, the plan that's gonna provide us. Once it provides us the plan, we'll be able to make sure that everything is working as expected. By the way, this is one of the usefulness of the superpower brainstorming, because it thinks through the design that you gave it. It picks up the lack or the other questions that will be related to building the full feature, just like it's doing right now, and you actually saw it. And then it's gonna ask you about it and give you recommendations as well. So you can always like accept the recommended, and for the most part, you should be fine. But if you do not wish to accept the recommendation, you can just choose other option, or you can even pass in a completely different answer for Claude's question, which are all great, but this comes mostly from the brainstorming superpower. But just make sure when you install and it using this brainstorming superpower, it's also going to try to write spec files for every plan that it creates. So just make sure you don't let it grow out of hand when it starts like writing spec files. I explicitly told it to not write spec files, so it should like remember that. The typeless PK test came back as text for both. We're spinning down whether that's SQLite or PDO's default string binding, because it decides whether get1 and getString1 stay distinct. All right. Let me verify 3 implementation details that shape the design before I write it up. So let's see what it's trying to do. Create table T. Here's the design. The swap point or is one interface store. Both drivers implemented method for method. DB users returns a thin collection facade that just queries the collection name onto the store. So it contains zero driver specific code and can never drift between drivers. Is what makes the two drivers agree. It's a read-only value object with a private constructor. Static factories, exactly like your role class. Perfect. Where role carries a predicate, sorry. Carries a closure, SQL fragment builder. One factory defines. Identity is one role. Implemented twice. ID is max integer ID plus 1 on both drivers. Caller supplied ID created at or updated at always wins verbatim. A duplicate ID throws. The JSON driver checks that explicitly, so it matches what SQLite's primary key does for free. Cool. Proving swappability is the test strategy. An abstract store contract test case holds the entire behavioral contract and is run twice, once per driver. Identical behavior gets proven rather than asserted. Cool. All right, so here's the plan. Context, we don't care. Design decisions. RDSL was Michael, which is me. Collection document store shape, not a query builder. And not active record models. Criteria are maps. Verified or is legal as named argument, labeled despite or being a PHP keyword. Sounds good. Non-equality comparisons use is factories. A bare scalar means equality, and order by descending limit offset are more named arguments on find. New flow and chain, so find keeps returning a plain array, and there is no get terminator to forget. Wonderful. Insert fills in ID created at and updated at, but anything the caller passes wins. Driver is chosen by config key and readable from .env, so local can be JSON and production SQLite. Wonderful. No spec design, so it did remember. This planned file is the spec. The durable knowledge lands in source AI CloudMD and CloudMD as part of the change. Verified facts, so we don't want to recheck it. It's giving us some code samples. We don't care about those because we're gonna review the code itself once it gets merged in. So out of scope, relations, migrations, explicit transaction API. JSON store cannot owner it. And an interface method, one driver fakes, is worse than no method. I agree with that. Aggregate functions beyond count, an active record model layer, and nested deep field pathing criteria. Top level. Okay, so all of this is out of scope in one. And then yes, and use auto mode. So we do have auto mode going in. We did take we skimmed the plan and we agree with it. So let's actually let it get to work. Okay, so it's using TDD because it is part of superpowers, test-driven development. So it's going to write like tests first. We can see that happening in real time once we have these files updated. So we can leave like the git opening right here. So once it writes files, we're going to see like edited files right here. Can collapse this because this is the Batframe skeleton repo. Now the first red test is the crux of the whole design. So its test defines the contract both drivers must honor. Sounds good. So it started typing right now, so we can see is test. So here is equals Michael. Assert true is matches Michael. Assert false, it matches is equals matches 18. Oh, so is equals 18 matches 18. This is great. Because 18 here is an integer, and here it's a string, but here both are integers, so they are equal. That looks good. Test not equals matches is not equals. Not equals, I don't like that. I think not equal. Well, anyway, let's see. The is the PHP itself, so we're using closure. Final is, so matches to SQL equals is not equals, so a missing field compares as null rather than collapsing the fragment to null. So not equals greater than, it's comparison greater than, greater or equal, less than, less or equal, between, not is safe to apply directly because every fragment is already 0 or 1. So here we have like, SQL like semantics, percentage is any of the run. How is it going to do that in, oh, it's going to do regex. Okay. All right. All right. I like that. But the question is, shouldn't we have two ises essentially? One for SQLite and one for so one for SQLite and one for JSON is how I would have imagined it. The only problem is that if we do that, then you have to import the correct is. So for example, if we're using, but this should be reflected by the driver, I would assume. So let's see at the end, actually. I want to see at the end how is this going to look like. Because from my mind, there should be like a global is, and then that global is should resolve into the correct is class. Like let it be a JSON or SQLite or whatever else that we use whenever we set up the configs. So this is how I should imagine it. And by default, we should have two, like JSON and SQLite, and then they all should have their own ises, like their own is classes. And then there should be like one global is class, which resolves correctly. So actually, I'm going to stop it here. I want to stop you here for a second. Let's revisit the is class implementation. I feel like as it is implemented right now, I feel like we are limited to what drivers we can use later. For example, say a contributor wants to add MySQL or Redis as a persistence layer. They have to add they have to edit the current singular is class, and instead of creating their own, this goes against solid, against the O in solid, which is open for extension, closed for modification. Instead, let's create a single global is class that automatically resolves into the correct is class based on the driver that is based on the data storage driver that is used in the .env file, which gets read in config files. That way, a new driver requires a store interface. I know that there's a little bug here. Maybe resizing could fix it. Yes, it does. Awesome. So a new store interface plus a new is interface, or a new store class and a new is class that are specific to this driver. That way, code stays separate and clean. Also, let's rename the namespace from persistence to data storage, which makes things much clearer in my mind. All right, let's see what it does right now. Let's see what it thinks, actually. Like, it's gonna try to review what we said, and then it's gonna come back to us. Thinking some more. It is hard to think about it. We're starting to get into the weeds in Batframe, which myself I too love. Making a framework is not easy, and it is going to get complex. Otherwise, there's no point of making a framework, because the whole idea of a framework is that it hides the complexity. You're right about the problem. Is hardcore's dialect Kolesk the is a new MySQL would need, but .env resolved is breaks something important. If is greater than 18 resolves to SQLite is, at construction time, a criterion is welded to one driver the moment you build it. That means store contract test case, the file that runs one identical test suite against both drivers, and the is the only thing actually proves swappability, becomes unwritable. There's also a cellular trap. Driver specific is classes make drivers open but operators closed. Adding is starts with later would mean adding all in driver is classes. You trade one OCP violation for a worse one. Okay. What I do instead keeps your goal exactly. New driver 0 is via double dispatch. Is becomes a pure driver agnostic description of intent, and each driver that speaks a query language brings its own compiler. So is the PHP store criteria compiler? So JSON store, SQLite store, and then SQLite compiler. So all SQLite dialect lives here. I mean, this is what driver owned compiler. I think this is what I meant even. Like not, it should resolve the same as always. So the same is always being used, but then on the backend, it just uses whatever compiler that, or whatever is class. I think I just didn't explain it pretty well, but anyway. Renaming the namespace to data storage, what should the exception be called under it? So data storage, storage exception, data storage exception is better. Submit answers. Okay. All right. So this looks like we are on the right track right here by fixing the little problems that we got. Whoops, I don't want to open Claude. All right, let's see what we have right here. So it deleted everything. Good call on both. The compiler split is the right axis, and it means is never learns a dialect, and that's what it should do. Let me redo this properly. First, remove the old namespace. Boom. Old namespace gone. And then that test file is probably also going to get removed. Now the seam that makes drivers open, a contributor implements this and nothing else in the framework changes. So now read for the new split. Is this drops all SQL knowledge and tests only canonical semantics? We have the is.php, which just speaks speaks the language of what the compiler should. All right. That looks cool. Let's see what we get right here. Okay, now the SQLite compiler, read first, and I'm going to promote that ad hoc parity harness into a permanent test since it's what caught the in bug. I don't know what Claude means by the in bug. Looks like there was a bug when he tried to write the in functionality and then the test caught it. I don't think, or at least I didn't see that it provided us the details about this bug. But it doesn't matter. That's the whole point of AI anyway. It makes mistakes, it iterates, and then the self-testing is critical. Is test, looks good. SQLite compiler test, beautiful. But I don't like that all of them live in the tests file. What's that? We should probably like add folders to the tests here, but we can do that like later in a later refactor to our code. So here we have the data storage exception, which we don't care about. We have a criteria compiler. Is the PHP. Let's see if it's gonna create. Oh, we have a store.php. So it does have insert many. update, update where, delete where, truncate. Get all, and then find, which is the most interesting. Find not, find one, count exists, and collections. All right. So we're gonna be playing a little bit with this once we get this finished. The contract test, the file that makes swappability provable. This is the red for both drivers. If you don't know, or if you don't understand what the red means, essentially what TDD is, or test-driven development, is that you write tests first, like test classes or test cases, just like these files right here. And then in these tests, you write what you would like to happen and what you would like your class and like your whole API to look like. And then, of course, it's going to fail. This is what's called the red test for, like this is what Claude is referring to right here. And then once you have everything failing, then you start to make each test works. For example, you now understand how you want the API to look like. You start implementing to look like that. So you're not thinking of the design anymore. You already did the design and you wrote and you like how it reads and how you wrote it and how you used your own API. Then you actually start writing the implementation. And by the time you're done, you actually have both things. You have the implementation and you have a test on top of it that actually tests the functionality. So it's a two-in-one. It's a good way to do testing or to do coding in general, but it just you spend more time on writing tests that you could have spent on the implementation itself. So usually in like a production heavy environment and like in like a company or a corporation or whatever you're working, when you value like output first and you have a bunch of things to work on, this could take like more time than just like TDD will take more time than just coding. So that's why, yeah, like it has its caveats. All right. The two thin subclasses that run the suite twice. So right now, I believe it is writing the ID implementation, I would say. Or no, this is probably the created at, actually, not the ID. So we have an error, 64 errors, just absolutely wonderful. JSON store test, lovely stuff. Two constants match, 64, or T0, sorry. I don't know what T0 here means. Writing JSON store surfaces a contradiction in my own contract test. I asserted a deleted ID is never reused, which silently requires a persisted counter. That would force the JSON file into a auto-increment n records wrapper and destroy the open file and read it property. That is the driver's whole selling point. The max ID plus one rule I designed reuses the top ID. The test is wrong, not the design. Okay, now the shared base. This holds only what is contract. ID rules, timestamps, name validation, never dialect, which stays in each driver. Awesome. That is cool. Now I'm looking for something specific that when it tries to do the SQLite driver, is it going to implement a external package, or is it going to remember that we wanted to create things or we don't want to depend on many external factors like what we did in PHP CLI in Bat build? We'll see actually how it's going to go for it. The question is, we do have the SQLite compiler. Looks like it's not using anything. It's actually just all local. I don't see any composer.json edits here. And we do have the SQLite compiler right here, which is great. So SQLite only has the compiler. JSON, why is this called SQLite compiler and JSON is called JSON store? Does that mean we need an SQLite store as well? And why there is no JSON compiler? Oh, we do have SQLite store right now. Oh boy. Oh boy. Now, in order to understand and put in grasp the AI power, like I want you to imagine that we wanted to write these from scratch. You'll be wasting weeks. Not wasting, but rather spending weeks in order to write all of that. And you'll probably like be forgetting some stuff, introducing bugs and all of that. The AI already iterates, it already writes tests, it already makes sure that everything is running as expected. But that doesn't mean it's perfect, okay? This is why a good engineer with AI, both are just an unstoppable force. Because look at how much we could get done in minutes. Like we've been adding a database, or not a database, but like a storage layer, 2 database layers, JSON and SQLite. And I've been recording right now for like 47 minutes. And look at how much we got done just by understanding what's going on, like actually knowing how things work, having a base design in mind, letting AI fill in the gaps, and then directing it into the correct direction. So we also intervened because the way it implemented the is and like the store and everything was not what I had in mind. So we did stop, we did intervene, we did redirect it, and it picked up on this pretty quickly. And just we complete each other. Like the engineer is a force that you cannot get rid of right now. Not in the current state of AI, in my opinion. AI is getting much smarter, and if we use Fable 5, it's probably going to produce like some much better results. But again, the engineer, as of right now, a good engineer, an engineer that understands what's going on, not just somebody who prompts Claude. An engineer that actually understands like backend systems. So you could call him an architect, a software architect, instead of like the common developer kind of thing, because like developers, at least in my mind, it was used exclusively for people that just wrote code, regardless of the architecture. So usually, like in bigger companies, you'd have an architecture that writes an architect that writes the architecture, and then the coders or the developers just had to implement it into actual codes, and then like maybe poke some holes into the architecture, come up with questions, and so on. But then with AI, the role of writing code is no longer a thing, because AI can write so much code so much faster than any single developer could, or even multiple developers. And it can do that with so much consistency. It can write tests. It can make sure that its own code is working and passing. So it does all of that just as an architect, or like like just as good as the architects is going to do their job. So an architect, like what we are doing right now, is we're like, as an architect, we are directing Cloud Code to be as efficient and as accurate as possible. So I want to like, you might see this and say development or software development is doomed and there is no way we can beat AI. And I do agree to some extent. AI is going to take over and it's only going to get smarter from here, I would assume. That means eventually it's going to outgrow engineers, probably. But we're not at that state yet. And I still think that engineers that understand engineering and software architecture are actually going to become more valuable, at least in the near future, because you're going to have a a flood of engineers, vibe coders that just do nothing but prompt Claude, but they have no idea what Claude is outputting, and they test it once, they think it's working, all good, push it to production, and then comes in the plethora of I would not say broken code, but rather broken business logic, as well as broken scalability. So you added this today, tomorrow you need to add a new feature, and then you find that the current feature is not built for extendability, and you figure out that you need to restructure the whole thing, and you just get like dig the rabbit hole deeper and deeper. Okay, so with somebody or with an engineer, or rather I would call them an architect right now, like a software architect, with a good software architect that understands what's going on, you will be saving so much time and so much money, rather than just relying on Cloud Code yourself and being a non-technical and just prompting it. Thanks for listening to my TED Talk. Maybe you disagree. Let me know in the comments if you disagree. But this is what I feel like from like using only Claude, like vibe coding only, and then being a, I guess you would call it a hybrid engineer right now, where you both use AI and write code yourself where necessary. And I still do both, of course. I do write code myself. Actually, most of the time, I write code myself, especially for sensitive things like, for example, pricings, or like where money is involved, or when something security related is involved, like for example doing password resets or anything that is sensitive like that. I do let AI run code review. So if you don't know, Cloud Code has a skill called code review. So that means it could just look at your code and then review it for any potential gaps. So we complete each other essentially. So yeah, engineering is not going away soon, but it's going to be more and more that you need to become a good engineer and a good architect instead of just writing code. So the more you understand how a system works technically and what calls what and where and how classes talk to each other, what is abstracted, what is not, and so on, the more valuable you're going to become and the more powerful you're going to become with AI. This is why I enjoy AI so much. It takes the heavy lifting of manual labor and just does it for you. Like, imagine if we just had to write all of this from scratch. Imagine just the time it took to write these things, even with like autocomplete and with analysis. Is it called analysis? IntelliSense and all of that stuff. So right here is doing a bunch of things. So right now, I believe it wrote everything. So the swap works. Let me make that claim rigorously rather than by eyeball. Capture both drivers' responses and diff them, normalizing only timestamps, which differ by wall clock, not by driver. So look at all the tests that it's doing right now. It's actually like deep testing everything almost. Byte for byte identical across drivers over real HTTP. Let me reset the example to its default state. So even after it's done, it's cleaning up its own mess after it's done with it, which is great. Now that docs per the repo's own rule, the contract is part of the change, not follow-up. Yep. So here we have the data storage. Data goes in collections, and a collection is schemaless. There's nothing to declare, no migration to run, and no model class to write. A record is an array. If you go looking for a schema file, reread this line. PHP users insert. So you just insert some stuff randomly. And get by ID or null. I believe get is going to like get in all if it has nothing. Find one, update. So update here is interesting. Maybe we should have like an update where. So if you don't know the ID, we could update by a query. Or you could just find ID instead. But we'll be testing this ourselves extensively. Now verify the contract file actually ships to vendor. I believe we already know that. But we could just let it cook because it is a big change, and I would love to let it cook on its own and do all the tests necessary. Let me get a critical review of the whole change before calling it done. So scale code review, it's doing its own code review, which is wonderful, just absolutely wonderful. Running code review in a different agent, or like in a background agent or a workflow, whatever you want to call it. While it works, let me check a concurrency property. The contract test can't cover. JSON stores locking actually prevents lost updates under real Perl writers. All right, looking good, looking good. 150 out of 150 distinct IDs, 0 lost updates across 6 processes. Now the same for SQLite, and I am suspicious here because I never set a busy timeout, which means concurrent writers may fail immediately with SQLite busy. Interesting, okay. Well, that's robust or luck. SQLite's default busy timeout is 0, which would mean immediate failure under real contention. Let me check what PDO actually sets. Okay. So it's suspicious of its own code, which gives you like insights into how good this thing is. If it's suspicious of its own code, then it knows not to trust anything blindly, and it actually does real deep testing, which is always much, much better than just an AI that tells you, yo, I'm done with this. Go figure it out. We still have the code review running. Let's review it right here. We have find, sweep, synthesize. Okay. Hold a write lock in one connection. Okay, it looks like it's holding the lock on SQLite for a while. Coalescing. PDO waits around 60 seconds by default, so 150 was unlocked, but also means a contended write blocks a web request for a minute. It relies on undocumented PDO default. Nothing, or noting that for a fix, once the review lands, I'll hold off editing so the review isn't reading shifting files. Meanwhile, a read-only check that matters. Composer.json claims PHP up to 8.1, but I've been developing on 8.4. That's not bad. Maybe we can even upgrade this. Like, we can require 8.4, I don't care. Clean on 8.1 compatibility. The only override hit is a dog block word, not the 8.3 attribute. No file parsers. Here's where things stand while the review finishes. The feature works, proven end to end. I ran the examples real HTTP endpoints. The first was in compiling. Okay, so it's giving us a recap. Concurrency, I verify beyond. Awesome. So we do have a big list of changes right here to test, but we're going to test it in real life by going into Batframe skeleton. If you don't know what Batframe skeleton is, essentially it is an application that we created that uses Batframe, but it does have the real Batframe application, or like, sorry, the real Batframe, what's it called? The real Batframe composer package coming from live instead of being sim-linked. Okay, so what we're gonna do, yes, I trust this folder. We're gonna open Cloud right here, and then in Batframe skeleton, replace the actual live Batframe package with a sim-linked one from, go back and then in Batframe. Okay, so we use the @ symbol here to reference a folder, and then we're gonna give it that. Oh wait. We are in Batframe skeleton. That's incorrect. That is incorrect. I do apologize. We should go back to Batframe sandbox. Okay. Yes, I trust this folder. So here we can just do the exact same thing. Replace, I'm gonna change it to just auto mode. So change the Batframe package from being fetched live to being sim-linked from go back a folder and then Batframe, because this project is a sandbox test project for new features that are introduced to Batframe framework. Okay, just give it some context to why you're doing that, and then overall it should just work. Code review is still running. That's okay. We'll just let it cook for a bit. This video is running an hour. I apologize about that, but I'm trying to give you as much information as possible and going into every single step so that, like, I'm building in public essentially. So everything that I did is available to you, and you're living the entire journey with me. So I'm sorry about the long videos, but I do think they are informative and necessary. So it changed from 0.8 to whatever, because we don't care about the version, and that's correct. I'll remove the fetched copy and reinstall, so Composer links the local checkouts. Did add it as a repository, which is great. So what we could do here, Batframe sandbox is not Git version, so we don't care about it. So it's linking the dev main junction successfully. Then we verify the app still boots against the linked copy. So it's running routes, which is great. Still lists all 3 routes, so the app boots fine. All right. Path repo is canonical. The sandbox can no longer install Batframe from packages at all. Moves or disappears. Composer install here will fail until the path is fixed. Okay, bro. All right, so time to actually test things now. So now we do have sandbox pointed at the local version. So if you go to vendor, Michael Yosri, Batframe, and then source, you can see that we do have data storage right now. which is not available live yet. All right. We're going to go to source and then app.php. We're going to test our get user application. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to leave this bash thing open. I'm going to send curl request from it to confirm our code. So by default, we should have e.env, which is a sensible like a sensible default. That we are using JSON by default, I would assume, right? So let's try it out. So here I'm just going to have the helper. What was the helper that we added anyway? Let's actually check it out because I don't know what the helper that was added is. So if we go here, we go, actually, let's view the code itself. So go to source, we can go to helpers. Let's check the edited code right here. It is DB. Wonderful. So here we're going to do DB like users and then insert. And let's actually just do a bunch of things. Test at example.com. So here we are inserting into the user's database, or not a database actually in this thing. But yeah, so here we are returning hello world. We don't want to return that. But instead here we can have the user. And then we're going to add like user and then not an object, but rather an array. Because insert returns an array of mixed data, which is great. The review found real bugs, several confirmed with reproductions. Let me read the full findings. Oh, we got some bugs, ladies and gentlemen. Data loss in JSON store, write calls ftruncate and then evaluates encode as an argument to fwrite. If encoding throws one non-UTF-8 byte from a form, paste is enough. The file is already zeroed and the finally only unblocks. A single bad submission permanently. Oh, that is a serious problem. Destroys the entire collection. Sheesh. SQLite rolls back and loses nothing since it's also a driver drift. Every float query silently returns nothing on SQLite. Parameter type has no isFloat branch, so 9.99 binds as text. SQLite compares real against text. Silently empty. Right after someone flips d.env line, I told them was safe. So, as you can see here, real life demonstration of how things can easily get broken if you are not testing things hard enough. And this is why, or this is one of the main reasons why we're using the superpowers, because it gives you like access to a lot of cool skills that Claude uses even on its own. We did not specifically instruct it to use it, but it did on its own, and it's working like wonderfully. All right, so while it's doing anything, I don't think we're gonna affect this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do curl http localhost. Oh, we're not running the app. Sorry about that. Let's do a PHP batbelt serve. And we're gonna start in ubash in a skeleton. Not in skeleton, that is the wrong thing. We'll just go back and do sandbox. Batframe sandbox. If I can type today. PDO genuinely cannot find the float as real. No param float exists. All right. Curl http localhost 1939, I think is the default. Yep. And we're gonna send it to slash user first. And let's see what we get. So we get hello John Doe, which is great. That means it did pass correctly and then it did save. So if we go to sandbox and then storage, we get database and we have users.json. Wonderful. So we get ID, name, email, created at, and updated at. This is beautiful. So then let's do something else. Let's do find and then name is so name is, and then we're gonna do equals John, or is like and then John. This is going to be interesting. Let's do that. And we get undefined array key name. Okay. So that means it returned nothing. It returns an array of arrays. Okay. So let's do find one instead, which should work. Okay, trying to access array offset on null. Cool. So let's do it here like that and then say name is anonymous by default. And we get hello anonymous. Okay, so it did not find a user like John, right? So this is a problem. So matching is case insensitive. So this should also return John. But apparently it is not doing that. So we are using the correct data storage is, which is the correct thing that should be used. But then this is so we do have the like here, pattern. Type safe, no magic strings. Is greater than 18. Is in admin owner. Never learns a query language. It describes intent. All right. So let's look for the JSON in the Batframe source, data storage, JSON, and then let's get the JSON store. And let's look for the like function. Apparently it doesn't have one. So we do have an SQLite compiler, but we don't have a JSON compiler. Let's look at the criteria compiler. We don't care about that. Let's look at is then, and then let's look at the like. So new self like. So here, if we take a look at JSON, like, there's no like at all. What about preg or like match? Let's see. Error editing file, SQLite compiler. Why is that? Is it because I have it open? Alt and green on both drivers. Now the full suite, which will show what my compiler changes broke, if anything. The 5 failures are SQL compiler test, exact fragment assertions, which describe the old dialect legitimate. strict equality genuinely changed the SQL. But the review also flagged that this file's parity harness binds parameters with its own rule. Okay. So I guess we can just wait for it to finish before we try to do the find one again. Oh, wait, the find one expects a... It expects a collection. Why does it say that? Oh, that's because it's on the store. Well, we're calling it on the collection. Yeah. So this is what we're sending, essentially. We're not calling it on the store directly because we do have DB users, which is the store. So the store, we're calling find one on the collection. Okay, cool. So this is correct. But then the is-like is not working on the user's database. Let's add this here, and then let's keep this open like that, just so we can see what's happening. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do user is going to be DB users, and then update where collection, and then is. So we're not going to do this. So we're going to do like name is equals, or without even using is, I believe. I think John Doe is supposed to work. So update where returns an integer, which is good. So we cannot do this, but we can just do like update it for now. Let's run it. So it says hello updated. So we're updating where is, and then we're updating values. Okay, so we need to reverse these. So John Doe, we need to update it to updated John. Let's run it. Oh, there we go. Now we're cooking. So we did get update where to be working. So this is good. So now we do have some data manipulation that is working. Let's also do something else. Let's do ID equals 1. And oh, we're updating it to the same thing. So let's do like something like this. Request and then name. Okay. So we're gonna do name equals up from request or something like that. And then there we go. It updates it correctly, which is wonderful. We can also do request validate and then name required, which is not working. This is not how we do validation in Batframe. So we're gonna do rule, and then we're gonna do like required, right? And then we're gonna do rule min length. I think it's called min. Yeah, we're gonna do min length of 5 characters. So let's test that by just sending like TES. And we do get an error. Array1 key must be of type string. Array given in app on line 26. What does that mean? Where are we trying to do that? So number one key must be of type string, array given. Does that mean on the validate function in the request? So validate request key and then array rules. Oh, this is why. This is why. So we're validating name and then we're passing in the rules here. Okay. So here we given the given data was invalid. We're sending it like that because we're not sending the content type. So if we send the header content type to be application JSON, then we should get a JSON response back. Cool. So at least we're validating right now. Let's actually improve that by doing testing name. And we get hello updated and updates it here. Looks like it looks like we're doing good, but the request validate is not what I want it to be. Can we do validate many? And then we can do that. But we don't have an email, so I just want to update the name. Call to undefined method validate many. Okay. Okay. So it's something that we should add. We should add in a next update, like adding the validate many to our request validates. I don't want to write it myself because I don't want to like break the rule that it's AI only. So I don't want to like ruin it with writing code myself. But essentially we could just loop over the array keys. Like calling the validate many, we just loop over the array keys and we can pass them to request key, and then we could call validate many on the validation itself. Because we do have a helper called validate many. If you go to helpers, so validate many, there it is. So we can call this, but I'm not gonna touch the code because this is the rule, this is the series. We're not gonna touch the code. We're gonna let AI run all the codes for us. So right here, it's still cooking. It's been cooking for quite a while after the code review. Looks like the code review is caught a bunch of things. And we're testing in the foreground was the application right here. So no commit to go tag. One judgment call worth your eyes. Is equals AB now throws rather than comparing structures. Both drivers refuse identically, which is what restores parity. But it's a real narrowing of what criteria I accept, and I'd rather you knew than discovered it. Okay. Both risers written over real HTTP. Okay. So now that it's done, let's actually go back and retest what we have right here. Whoops. So we're gonna test like what we have right here. So I'm gonna it's not persistent, it's data storage and then is, I assume it is. Yeah. And then is like John is incorrect. Let's do is like testing. And then here we don't want to update anything. We're gonna change this to username again. Let's send the request and we get hello anonymous. So that means the like is not working. I'm going to take a screenshot. I don't know if you can see this on the recording or not, but I'm taking a screenshot of the code. I just hit Alt and V in order to paste the image, and then it says image 1 right here. And then I have this code and this data structure. The find is not working, or the like is call is not working on or in a JSON file. In a JSON file, you can see in the file that we do have the data correctly, but the end actually we could, but the end result is returning anonymous. It's just gonna trust me even if I don't have the data in the image itself. I don't know if I can even open the image. I can. Wonderful. So this is the image that I took. And let's see if it works. By the way, one caveat that I learned the hard way, you can paste images with Alt-V, not Control-V, into the Claude terminal. Okay? Invoking the debugging skill, since this is a reported bug. Interesting. Context window is slowly dwindling, which is something that I don't like. Oh, it needs to add the percent sign. Should is grow wildcard free text criteria, so the common cases don't need like syntax at all. Is contains, is starts with, is ends with. Is like stays for genuine patterns. And escaping is handled. So this literal. So this is literal. Yeah. This is a really good thing to add. So instead of like expecting, so what it's saying is that if I add a percent sign here and run it, it's actually going to get testing name, which is great. So now the like, and it even tells me like percent is any run of characters, SQL like semantics. So I should have like memorized this, but I didn't. So it looks like contain starts with, ends with, and then like all of them can existing is awesome. So we're gonna add that. This is a really good find in our testing, and it's doing like a really good job. I know the video is running super long, and I'm not gonna keep you any longer. So after this is after this, I'm just gonna make it push and add the tag and the release, and that will be it. We're gonna end the video there. I don't like videos to be this long, but we do have a lot to cover in our framework, micro framework, I should say. So we discovered a real, not bug, but something confusing together, and we solved it ourselves. Okay, not solved it ourselves, but we told Claude about the problem, like we discovered ourselves. It gave us some good options to solve it, and I think it's good. So it's starting with TDD again, because it needs to create tests first. So here it's adding some more tests for contain, starts with, ends with. So you can see that contains is similar to like, but with ampersand around the letter. So here we can, after like the test or after the fix is implemented, we can change like to contains, and we're gonna test the word testing without the percent sign. I'm gonna see what happens. escape like. So that way, even if we're searching for things that include special characters like the ampersand right here, but this should be in the contains, I assume, because the like is. Oh, that's a lot of data to test. That's lovely. The more tests and the more things we have, the better. Every new operator agrees. The one failure is delightful. My unknown operator test. Use start with as it's fake. And starts with is now real. Cool. Text criteria refuse things. Now the docs, including the sharp edge that caught you. So did it delete the like? No, it did not. I can see it right here. So it's updating the Cloud MD, which is also important. Now confirm it works against your exact case, the real record, both drivers through a live app. So it looks like it's going to do that for us. And it looks like it is literally cooking right now, which is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful stuff. There is one thing that I want to tell you. Thank you for watching to this point. If you have watched to this point, it means a lot to me because it takes me like a lot of time to record these videos. I do them like completely unprepared. So I just go turn on the camera and then think as I go through. That's why I talk a lot and try to explain so many things. I have information hidden all over the video because I'm not trying to make you watch the entire video, but it's because I think of these things as we encounter them in our real life. So this is why I wanted to thank you. So here is like it's still not working because we expect that. Now let's change it to contains. We're going to get testing name. Wonderful. Let's change testing name to something else, like Michael 40 or something weird like that. So let's do 40. And then we're going to do it like that. Then we're going to do like, I don't know, score. And then we're going to do like 50%. I only got 50% because I suck. So here we can do, instead of name, we're going to do like score. And we're going to do 50%. Do that. Add the missing C in curl, and then we get hello Michael 40. So it did correctly get that our score contains 50%. And then let's do equals. Also, we get it as 50%. Wonderful stuff. Just absolutely wonderful. So it looks like everything is working and we are good to go. So I'm going to tell it everything seems to be working pretty well. Let's add, let's release it. Make sure to push, or like to commit, push, and release, and tag it. And yeah, while it's doing that, we could, oh, so here it just updated the default example, which is fine. The example can always be updated. That's okay. That is okay. One thing that we need to discuss here real quick is that I don't need to update now the skeletons, Claude.md, because if you can see that how the framework behaves actually is linked to the Claude.md in the source, AI source, which is what gets updated with all the inner works of the framework. This line above imports the framework's on contract, the naming convention, what a handler may return, the pages fallback, straight out of the install package. So it always describes the version this project actually depends on rather than a copy that drifts. Composer installed to have run. If it has not, the import is silently skipped and you are working without the framework's guidance. The fix is to install dependencies to read it directly. Wonderful stuff. So right now it is pushing to GitHub for me because I already gave it access to do so. And we are creating a commit. We are going to create a release and a tag. So that way, whenever we go to packages, let me pull that up real quick, packages.org. And then I go to my packages and then I go to Batframe. We will see that we have, let's see what version it tags it. 090. So here we could give it a refresh. It's not live yet. Let's go to GitHub and I'm going to go directly to Batframe. Still 080. Push to main. GitHub release. Oh yeah. Okay, so it's still going to release. Okay. So it is Batframe can keep your data now. Interesting. So I'm going to refresh. It's still running. Running one shell command. Pushed and tagged. All right. Give it a refresh. There we go. We do have data storage. Batframe can keep your data down. Now 2 drivers, 1 interface. DB driver SQLite. Did we add it in the .env example? This should be in Batframe, DB driver JSON. Yep. That's correct. And we should probably update the skeleton with this. So here we should probably have DB underscore driver equals JSON in the env example. Tarball ships AI, source AI Claude.md, and then your classes and the root Claude.md is correctly absent. Export ignore working. Last check packages. So it's also doing checks over packages and over GitHub. So I don't even need to check myself, which is super duper cool. All right. So I guess we can just call it a day. We confirm that everything is working. We're getting closer to actually using Batframe in a real project that I'm going to push live, but it's just not yet. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video where we keep adding more cool stuff to Batframe. We're going to do some refactors to the request to validate that you saw, and we're probably going to do some changes to skeleton. And yeah, I wanted to thank you again for watching to this point. You're great. Give me likes, give me subscribes, give me comments. Let me know just how you think in general about these videos, if you're actually learning something or if I'm just blabbing in your ears and you've wasted your time. I'll be happy with both because I'm going to improve in the future videos. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in future videos. See ya.